Chapter 8, We Won't Fade into Darkness. Present day. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Repeat. Light rained in through Lumina's horn, and with it came the vibrations. Together the two spread to every centimeter of Lumina's body. As she invited more of it in, she began to resonate like a tuning fork, and her spine and horn came alive with an inner glow. That was magic. That was her element. Behind Lumina's closed eyes, purple and white shapes flashed across her mind's eye. Twilight spoke to her without using words. The ideas and emotions directed at her were much broader than anything containable by language, and the absolute truth in their meaning would be lost if she tried. Animus is going to want to talk with you, Twilight said. That much rang out with clear and with easily defined words. You should get going soon anyway. You're not going to want to be here much longer. Lumina thanked Twilight, opened her eyes, and gazed out the window of her room at the white expanse. Outside, the centipede slithered over the ice back to its burrow. The sun was just starting to creep above the mountains to the east. In little over an hour, the machine buried in the ice would start melting the very ground the Lunadream rested on. The intercom on Lumina's bedside table beeped. She got up and tapped the intercom button. Yes. I am outside your door, said Animus. May I enter? Go ahead, come right in. In walked Animus in his new body, without stumbling or losing his footing. He really improved a lot over the evening. How is your leg? As he talked, his arms dangled by his sides limp. He still hadn't mastered body language. It's feeling a lot better. Lumina glanced down at the dermal regeneration bandages plastering her hind leg. It still stings a bit. I can walk on it now, and it doesn't hurt nearly as much, so it's pretty good. Are you in adequate health to move us into orbit at the end of the hour? Animus asked. I hope so, she replied. There's only one way we can tell for sure, right? I won't know until I try. You know, I'm really surprised you're taking this whole I can do magic thing so well. Lumina, I am a machine. Animus gestured at himself. I am by nature logical and skeptical. When I observe something that falls outside of my current understanding of the universe, I do not deny its existence. Your horn and the cup glowed and then the cup moved. I do not understand how or why it moved, but it did. You say that this was magic. I say that your explanation is better than any I can provide. Thank you. For what? For believing in me. Lumina's face lit up. I have no reason to disbelieve you. Animus attempted another gesture, but that time he backed his arms down before committing. You have tapped into something I do not understand. When it comes to issues involving magic, I will defer to your judgment. If you say you can move the ship, I have no reason to doubt you. A golden ray of sunlight peeked over the mountains to the east, and filled the room with its light. Lumina turned around, braced for the cold, and placed a hoof against the window. She watched as the tail end of the centipede slithered over a scab of rock and out of sight. She stared at the unmoving rock for a long moment, half expecting the centipede to appear out behind it again, but it never did. I think that I can, because in many ways I have to go on, Lumina said. I can't die here, not after everything that I've learned since the crash. We have to get back to colonized space. The galaxy is in a bad state. Lumina stepped away from the window and turned back to Animus. You were there when we went to Arian, you know how bad it is there. How many other worlds have been ravaged by war? This planet used to have life on it, but you can see how it is now. So how long before we push ourselves into darkness just like the aliens that used to live here? The elements of harmony might be our only hope, and I don't know how, but if there is even a sliver of a possibility that they might make the galaxy right again, then we have to get off this rock and find them. The Lunadream must fly. I do not wish for us to terminate here either, said Animus. He paused, the irises in his eyes spun round furiously before breaking from his trance. Animus put a foot out the door and waved a claw for Lumina to follow. What is it? She asked. I have detected an anomaly. Down the hallway, there was a relay for the long-range sensors. Animus removed a panel from the wall and tossed it aside. He shoved a claw inside, then pulled it right back out. It appears that this junction in the long-range sensor relay has experienced water damage. Animus pulled a box of blinking lights out from behind a bundle of wires and started tinkering away. The box spat out a puff of acrid smoke. I have noted that the ship has experienced widespread yet minor water damage. I am curious to know how this has occurred. I'll tell you that when you tell me why you never said anything about the movie theater, said Lumina. Animus pulled a wire out of his forearm and plugged it into the box. The onboard movie library is less than ideal, he said. I am not an AI who enjoys spending his processing power riffing bad movies in the ship's theater. I believe this is a good way to go insane. Besides, am I not allowed some secrets? Whatever, you just don't like the idea because you're worried Manos is on file. Lumina, the ship that attacked us has returned. Animus unplugged himself from the box and left it dangling out of the hole in the wall. Are you sure? Her heart jumped. How do you know it's not just some FTL freighter off course, or pirates? Did you rule out Griffin radicals? They took the hyperlift up to the bridge, and there on the long-range sensor display was a ship closing in on the planet. Its thermal emissions and ion trail were identical to the ship that attacked them. Lumina watched it on the holographic display. It was nothing more than a little red dot closing in 1 pixel at a time. It prowled out from the shadow of the moon. That was why Animus didn't detect it until just then. It probably spent the last few days moving behind the cover of asteroids, planets, and moons to stay hidden. In an hour, the thing would be right on top of them. If we stay here, we're dead. Lumina spun around in her command chair and faced Animus. If we leave, they'll be waiting for us in orbit. I believe that the saying caught between a rock and a hard place accurately describes our situation. Animus turned a holographic projection of Luna Dream over with a gesture of his claw. What is our plan of action? Purple light flashed behind Lumina's eyes. She blinked, and the image of Twilight Sparkle was waiting for her with a reassuring smile. We leave this planet, just as planned. Lumina leapt out of her command chair and planted all 4 of her hooves onto the deck plating with a thud. As for the enemy ship, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we can't let them intimidate us into staying. It's time for us to leave. She kicked at the floor. Power up our engines and prep the dark matter reactor for transit. I'll be down in the observation deck pushing us into orbit. Do you require anything to cast this spell? Thank you, but no, just let me know when we're in orbit. Lumina trotted off the bridge and down the stairs to the observation deck. Actually, can you give me full power to the engines? Every little bit helps. Affirmative, Animus said over the intercom. I will remain on the bridge and monitor the ship's systems. I will inform you when we have achieved spaceflight. With her hooves planted firm on the white floor, Lumina faced the panoramic window and the broken mountains beyond. Deep breath in, and deep breath out. Lumina closed her eyes, and summoned twilight with her mind and heart. A flash of purple and a wave of reassuring emotion let her know she was there. I've checked through the books last night, and I couldn't find any instance of a pony moving anything as big as a FTL ship on record, Lumina said. Is this possible, Twilight? Anything is possible, but you're trying to ask more than just that. To answer your other question, no, I never moved anything that big in my day. Not because I wasn't able to, it just never came up. However, this isn't about me and what I could or couldn't do, this is about you and your development. I took my tests a long time ago and passed, for the most part at least. The trials you'll have to face are going to be different than mine. Thank you, Twilight, Lumina said. Stick with me on this one. I'm going to need all the help I can get. Lumina took another deep breath, and with that, she started casting her spell. Magic flowed into her horn, at first just at a trickle, but as she visualized its golden glow racing across Luna Dream's long hull, over the ramjet engine spokes, and over the reactor dome, the magic expanded. It surged in and projected out of her body. She imagined the ship lifting off the ground. Soft vibrations of the highest frequency consumed the entire ship, but in her they reached an intensity that threatened to shake her apart. Lumina grunted. The Luna Dream's outer hull moaned as its weight warped and shifted. Animus fired the engines, and the entire ship creaked and lurched. The screeching of metal against ice echoed up from the depths of the ship. Animus, give it all you've got, she said. Engines are at full power. His voice nearly pulled her out of her trance. I cannot provide any more assistance in this capacity. The vibrations flowing through Lumina hit a resonance in her head. Her skin burned, and her horn felt as if it were splitting apart. She let go of the spell with a gasp and the ship settled back into the ice. Panting and shivering, Lumina sank to the floor. There was no way she could move the ship, it was too massive. No, I can do this. Lumina let out a huff, brushed her mane out of her face, and stood up. I am the element of magic. I can move this ship if I need to. She closed her eyes again and, between her controlled breathing, called out to magic until it streamed through her once again. After coaxing it over the Luna Dream's hull, Lumina concentrated on the sensation of ascending and maintaining her connection. The vibrations rose in frequency until they peaked at that painful resonant point, but this time she held on and didn't let go. Ice scraped against the lower hull sections as the entire ship lurched. The magic flowing over the ship coagulated together and Lumina's carefully constructed ascending motion broke into rocking. She didn't fight it, she used the rocking movement to try to push and pull the ship up and free. Lumina panted through clenched teeth. Pain radiated into her head. The ship creaked. It moaned and it tilted and it lifted off the ground. Lumina opened her eyes and there, right out her window, the mountains scrolled by at a slow and steady pace. She wanted to laugh, smile, cry out in joy, but she restrained herself. Without focus, the spell would break and the Luna Dream would tumble back to the ice. Sunlight raced over the ground and bathed the sides of the mountains in amber light. Lumina shut her eyes tight and focused on maintaining the spell. Strength bled from Lumina's body each second she maintained the levitation spell. Magic wasn't just funneling through her, there was magic inside her as well, and as she invited more and more in from the magical realm and out of her body, her own vital essence drained with it. If there was a method for keeping her own magical reserves intact during spell casting, she didn't have the slightest idea of how to do it. Soon standing itself became a challenge. The pain hit a new high, and her controlled breathing devolved into quick and erratic panting. The magic no longer felt like vibrations, but instead pins and needles pouring through her horn and into her head. A sharp pain cut into her nose and nearly broke her concentration. She fought back a scream and struggled to stay on her hooves. No amount of pain, nor that wet something rolling out of her nostril, would break her focus. Lumina kept her posture and her mind focused. How much longer do I have to keep this up? Lumina thought. She didn't allow herself to add, I don't think I can do this much longer to that sentence. She would succeed. She had to. A scream escaped from Lumina's mouth, and with that her breathing broke, her eyes shot open, and her grasp on the ship disintegrated. Gravity pulled at the Luna Dream, but Lumina fought back and regained a weak hold over the ship. Purple flashed in her mind's eye. You can do it, Twilight Sparkle told her. I know you can. Lumina stomped her front hoof and let the magic surge through her and over the ship. Her hold over the ship strengthened and she pushed the thing upward. After an eternity of pain and struggle, the amount of force Lumina needed to exert on the Luna Dream to keep it sailing skyward diminished. The engines started doing most of the work. A short time later, Animus's voice buzzed over the intercom. We have achieved spaceflight. Lumina released the spell and collapsed the floor with gasping and coughing. Her eyes only opened halfway. The vibrations flowing in and through her diminished to a tolerable level. Her entire body tingled with magic. Outside, the planet's craggy surface rolled by in the warmth of the rising sun. A single puff of grey clouds dotted the white icescape, and she smiled knowing that when the sun set that day, it would set over a new world. She closed her eyes and nodded off. Metal footsteps pattered down the stairs and pulled Lumina out of her shallow snooze. She rolled over on her other side, and there was Animus standing in the back of the room. The engines are now maintaining a stable escape trajectory, he said. Congratulations, Lumina. You are now the first equine to lift a starship into orbit using magic. I think the attempt almost killed me, she said. I'm not trying that again ever, but I will admit, it was pretty awesome. Animus pointed in her general direction. You have something on you. Oh, that. Lumina then snorted, and flicked the blood away from her nose with a hoof. That's just a nosebleed, don't worry about it, it's the least of my worries right now. I was referring to the symbol on your flank. Lumina forced her head up to look at her side, and double-taked once she did. There, on her flank, was a shooting star. At its head was a golden-yellow six-armed nova surrounded by three smaller blue stars, while the tail of the shooting star curved around into lavender crescent that matched the color of Lumina's eyes. The symbol was present on both of Lumina's flanks. That's my cutie mark, Animus. Lumina chuckled. It means that I finally figured out who I am. I'll celebrate that after I've had a little nap. I thought those were just a myth, Animus said. What, you mean like magic? She traced the crescent tail of her cutie mark with a hoof. I have to admit, even as I started to learn about magic, I never actually thought I'd get my mark. Animus put a claw to his brow and entered another trance, and the lights in his eyes spun around. What is it? Lumina fought her way into a sitting up. Without breaking from his trance, Animus answered, the enemy ship is on an intercept trajectory. I am powering up the laser. They haven't fired on us yet? Lumina asked. No, they are holding fire. Animus broke from his trance and rested his claw by his side. They are closing in on us rapidly. They will be in visual range off our bow in less than a minute. We are easily within the range of their weapons. I believe they are trying to look us in the eye. With Animus's help, Lumina rose to her hooves and searched the starfield behind her for the ship. It assaulted her, marooned her, and haunted her nightmares, and she still didn't even know what it looked like. Here's what we're going to do, Lumina said. After Lumina finished filling Animus in on the details of her plan, she hurried down to the nearest transmat station and entered in her target location. Animus disagreed with her, but she didn't give him a choice. She could hardly stand or walk, but she could still argue. With Animus connected to the ship and providing assistance, the programming didn't take more than a minute to set up. Lumina climbed into a fresh spacesuit. She checked over the suit systems on her heads-up display and gave Animus the order to engage. Yellow light washed over Lumina, and when it passed she was floating over the hull of her ship, right above the bridge. The planet stretched out in an endless plain of white just a few meters away from her. She magnetized her boots and let them anchor her to the ship. Pale rings glowed in the light of the sun over the planet. Lumina's own breath echoed in her helmet, so she switched on her suit's MP3 player and played Make Your Own Kind of Music. The dry and flavorless air pumping into her suit irritated her nose, she thought it might start bleeding again. But you've gotta make your own kind of music. Sing your own special song. A speck sped toward the Luna Dream, and as the seconds passed, it only grew. Details such as the tentacles, twisted spines, and solar sails that resembled the wings of a wasp became clear. Its outer hull was as black as a fly's exoskeleton. Holes pockmarked the entirety of the ship's hull, giving it the appearance of something both very old and very alive. Magic streamed into Lumina's horn with a new intensity. After her ordeal lifting the ship, this new influx of magic cut into her head with a sharp pain. She wasn't trying to cast a spell, it just started flowing into her all on its own. Even though it hurt, she let it happen and didn't attempt to shut it out. Unicorn magic didn't happen without a reason. She couldn't even fight the new influx of magic if she tried, just standing up took all her remaining strength. Lumina, if they hold position, Lumina said to Animus. That's an order. The monstrous ship slowed to a stop less than a kilometer off the Luna Dream's bow. Its tentacles squirmed and groped in the direction of the ship. Lumina tapped a button on her foreleg console. Her suit's comm system tapped into the Luna Dream's communication array, and broadcasted her voice across all hailing frequencies. I'm not scared of you anymore, she said. Despite everything you did to me, I am not frightened of you. I forgive you for all the pain you caused me. The frightened, angry, and lost unicorn you planned on finding isn't here anymore. You're not welcome here, so leave. Lumina grunted and winced. The magic in her horn was reaching a peak. White light spilled out of her and cast a brilliant glow across the Luna Dream's hull. Green lightning arched between the spines on the enemy ship, and then surged forward at her in a cruel arc. Lumina grit her teeth, curled her mind and the magic around a single thought, and pushed back. Just as she did with the cup and the Luna Dream. The lightning never struck her. She watched in awe as golden light surged out her and swallowed the green lightning. Her suit's helmet tried to compensate for the light by darkening her visor, but with no success. The magic that once surged through her vanished before the spell could travel any farther. Lumina gasped for breath and her visor fogged up. Blood rushed to her head, and caused her world to spin. Her vision blurred, and her legs gave out underneath her. She remembered a numbing sensation washing over her, and her hearing fading out, but after that she didn't remember anything else. Asterisk. There was a discontinuity, a break in her memory. The next thing she remembered was lying on the hull of the Luna Dream with her face resting on the side of her helmet. Her horn still ached, but not as much as it did before. The numbness and the grogginess fled from her rapidly, leaving pain and fatigue in their wake. Lumina pulled herself back onto her hooves and stared at the monstrosity off the bow of the ship. I have detected an electromagnetic disturbance on the hull of the ship, Animus said. Lumina, what is happening out there? The vibrations in Lumina's horn subsided. She didn't know where all that magic just came from, but it was gone now. If the ship tried to attack her again, it would obliterate her. Instead of unleashing another barrage, the glare of fusion engines and the aura of chartreuse magic erupted along the front of the other ship. It turned tail and ran until it disappeared from Lumina's sight. She sighed in relief. I think I just scared them off, she said. And it's a good thing they lit out when they did. I think I blacked out after casting that last spell. Even at full strength, there was no way I could have possibly fought them off. We helped you today because you needed it. Twilight's voice whispered inside Lumina's head, but she was aware that 6 others were present with her. We will always be there to help guide you, but we will not intervene as we did today again. If you want help, you will have to get it from your friends and the current bearers of the elements of harmony. Don't worry, Twilight, I'm going to find them. Thank you, Twilight. Thank you, Celestia. If it's all right with you, I think I'm going to go back to my ship now and pass out for a while. What was that, Lumina? Animus said. Nothing, I was just talking to Twilight. Lumina disengaged the magnetic clamps on her boots and drifted off the hull. Any sign of the other ship? Affirmative, he said. They are accelerating to an FTL velocity on a trajectory away from us. I believe we are in the clear. Lumina savored the sensation of weightlessness for a moment, and then asked for permission to come aboard. Animus recalled Lumina back to the ship and was waiting for her in the transmat station. The instant the yellow light faded, Lumina dashed forward and threw her hooves around Animus, then stood up on her hind legs and did a little victory dance, right before doubling over and falling into the wall for support. Animus dragged her up onto her hind hooves and slung a leg over his shoulder. She leaned on him for support, and together he led her out of the transmat station. We did it. Lumina flung her helmet off. Part of me still can't believe it, but somehow we survived all that. We're going to be okay. But let's never do that again, okay? I can confirm that by a bizarre set of circumstances we are alive. For a second, Lumina thought she caught Animus' smile. After he carried Lumina back to her room, Animus hurried up to the bridge and plotted a course to New Canterlot. Meanwhile, she spent some time pampering herself. She crawled out of her spacesuit and prepared a bath for herself. She endured quite a beating over the last week, so she decided to give herself a bit of quiet time to recover and the opportunity to soak her knots and bruises. She even discovered some Epsom salts underneath her sink and added it to the bath. The steam radiating off the water soothed her lungs and face. Very quickly she lost the battle to stay awake, and she woke up several hours later in her bathtub. Enough of her strength had returned to get out of the bathroom and cook up a meal. She was ravenous. Her lunch consisted of key lime pie, jello, and hay fries. A new wave of energy hit her after she finished eating. Afterwards she went up to her room and dug the remains of her copy of the Elements of Harmony, a revised reference guide out from behind her bed. She reached out to it with her mouth, but then decided to levitate it using magic instead. It took a lot of effort, but after a minute of work, it lifted off the bed and followed Lumina out of the room. Lumina found Animus toiling away at the controls of the ship's bridge. Only the dim orange glow of holograms lit the room. Not like a direct interface, is it? Lumina stepped up to the command chair and lowered the book onto an unlit console. It is not nearly as intuitive, Animus said. However, I am determined to master it so that I won't have to rely on a direct interface when communicating with other devices. Animus dismissed the hologram and flipped open the book. The pages crackled at his touch. His eyes darted across the smeared text and images. Do you think it can be fixed? Lumina asked. We have the technology to travel hundreds of light years in an instant, Animus said. I am sure that somewhere on New Canterlot is the technology to repair a book. He turned the page, and out popped an ink-stained picture of Lumina and her mother. Lumina levitated it off the ground and set it back in the pages of the book. Animus's eyes zeroed in on the picture. I still have data relating to the vessel that ferried her off Arian. Animus opened up a hologram filled with text. It would be simple to track her down. Lumina walked around the command chair and gazed out the window. Space was full of stars. No, my path isn't to keep chasing her, Lumina said. I have to do something else now. What is your path? Do you still wish to resign as a pilot? I don't know if I'm going to quit my job, or not. Lumina turned her eyes back on her friend. I do know this though, somewhere out there are the 5 other elements of harmony, and I've got to find them. You're welcome to join me, if you like. You've got a body now, you can leave the ship, and come along on whatever adventures await me. The thought had not occurred to me. Animus dismissed the hologram and brought up another. I can indeed leave the ship now if I desired. This platform is highly mobile. I am free to do as I please. However, I cannot imagine any place my presence would prove more useful than in the company of my friend. I'm happy to hear that, Lumina said. There isn't anyone I'd rather face tomorrow with. Together they watched the stars and planets speed by. Tomorrow more challenges waited, and a galaxy filled with struggle faced them in the coming weeks, but for the time being, they rejoiced in the starry sky. Special thanks and dedication. I may be the author of Awakening, but just as they say it takes a whole village to raise a child, it takes an entire team of editors, pre-readers, proofreaders, reviewers, critics, and cover artists to make a novel happen. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank those people, for without their help, Awakening would not have been possible. Nathan Goldvision Wathamu Garnot CS Imad Max, and a legendary warrior who I am sure would wish to simply remain anonymous. I, of course, cannot forget about all those in the Fimfic community, who lent their support and help and feedback and were there throughout the long posting process. Thank you all. Finally, I'd like to dedicate this work of fiction to my friends, an owl, a tramp, and a man in a white suit. You were, and still are, there when I needed most.